Well, here's the news on this latest Drake R4B that I received. In the last videos, I noted how well this one received, and I was able to bring it back to life. I was going to skip cleaning this radio because it was really corroded, and it still is, but I thought, well, it's worth, I guess, some time, so. And this is unbelievable, but I had read that you could put ketchup on copper and salt and clean it, so that's what I did. This thing had green gunk in it here and there. It's still not a great looking radio, but it's probably cleaner than it was. Anyway, there's no dirt in this thing anymore, just tarnish from the previous owners leaving it out on the porch in Massachusetts or some awful thing like that. But it had a lot of green crud right here. Gee, that was really bad. So anyway, that sort of came off with the ketchup and salt, and I applied it 3 times. Let it sit for maybe 20 minutes each session, and it had a lot of crud in there too, so that all came out. Yeah, this radio, I didn't want to put a lot of time into it because I thought it was so far gone as far as how it looks. It works great, but I thought, you know, I could end up putting a day in this thing, which I probably have now. Didn't want to put a day in this radio, but that's probably the worst part of the radio right there, where it's kind of corroded. Anyway, whatever. So I did get the PTO all squared away. Let's put the radio back and look at the PTO. Yeah, so, oh, here's a radio. So anyway, the side of it had a bunch of tarnish and doesn't look any, maybe it's a little better. The back of this thing was really nice. Yeah, let's take a look at that. The back of it looks better. Or does it? Yeah, it looks a little better. The back of it had green junk around here. That's all gone. I'm not going to jump up and down and say, my God, it's a collectible radio, but it looks better than it did. And I'm fussy. You know, if I'm going to own something, I want to make it as nice as possible. If it's a used radio, my standards are rather high, so I guess Ron Baker's standards are high too, or higher than mine probably, but anyway, that's what I've been doing here, and I'm about ready to put the PTO back in this thing. I took the PT out a few nights ago, and this needed a bunch of work too. It just was kind of sticky and laggy and all that, so it's been perfected finally. So I'll put that in this radio tomorrow probably. Anyway, let me go over the PTO for a sec if I can get the radio out of the way without wrecking it or wrecking something here. I always find you grab these by the transformer and just get them out of here. So just grab it like this. Get it off the desk. There, onto the floor it goes. So the PTO. This was the first R4B PTO that I really had to take apart, that I felt needed to be, and excuse me, yikes. It's the first one that I ever took apart as far as, I mean, I fixed these things as far as the insides of the mechanism here. I fixed the board in here with shorts and open connections, but I've never really had to think that one of these needed taken apart before, but this one did. So it was kind of sticky, and why? Well, first of all, it needed, you know, of course, lubrication in the bearing in there, like they all do. I did that to it and lubricated the worm gear, but yeah, it didn't help a whole lot. So I found that whoever had refurbed this thing before had the tension inside here up too high, so I had to pull the cover off and put an Allen key in there and slightly back off the bearing tension on the bearing. And so you can see the bearing here. Where is it? Yeah, so that little, where the worm gear ends, and there's like a little silver screw coming out, that's actually what the Allen key tightens, and it rests against that worm gear. So let me point to it. So this little thing in here right there, that's what gets tightened up, and it hits against this worm gear here. If that's too loose, you're going to notice there's some slop in the front knob a little bit, but a tiny, tiny bit of slop is desirable. You don't want this too tight because it'll be hard to turn and it will wear out the bearings. So I did back it off a bit. What else did I find? I found that there was bad lubrication on the shaft. So I took this whole thing apart, took this part off. I didn't take the big circlip off. I just took off the two circlips here. So you can easily take these circlips off. And then this whole thing pulls off. And so I put a little bit of standard synthetic grease on that part of it. And that cleared it up. And I also put some PAO printer grease on this gear here. I find this gear here is a little skewed and bent. And I really can't fix it. It would be, the build of this box would have to be different to make it stand up a little bit. So it's a little skewed, but it works. So yeah, it's quite a pleasant PTO to tune now. So I'm happy with how it turned out. You know, I'll clean it up a little more, clean up the Lexan here with some Windex or something carefully and put it back in the radio and see how it goes. So pretty happy with that. And how did I take those things out? I bought these Irwins a couple days ago for these tiny circlips. I didn't really have a circlip remover for the tiny circlips, but these Irwins work pretty good. These are about $10 on Amazon, which is cheap, and they come with different noses, so you can work on all sorts of different clips. So that's a really good deal. Anyway, yeah, I can show you how that clip comes off. I can take off that screw and take the knob off real quick and just show you how to clip onto it. I don't like one hand doing this, but let's try it out. Okay, the screw's loose, knob comes off. You can grab this thing with little circlips pretty easily and take it right off. So you would just grab your circlips on this little circlip pliers and this little circlip here. It'll fit right in there, believe it or not, like that. Well, it's believe me, it works. So you can put these in here and take it right off, take off the next one, and you're all set. You don't need to take apart the big circlip that holds this whole thing together. This comes off as an assembly, so don't take off the big circlip. Just remove this whole thing right off. And to put it back together, you basically want to push this axle in on the spring, and you'll see it will depart from the gear. And you see how it departs from the gear. And then you can work with it and slide the thing down and get it working. So that's about it. And you got to make sure the little clutch here is aligned right. That little jumpy button clutch there that hits the hole, this little clutch will hit the hole at the stop. And that's a little tricky to set. You have to really fiddle with it to make sure it works right on both ends. It's not as easy as I thought. And of course you want to make sure the frequency is aligned correctly for the radio. I'll do that later. All right, well, I'm glad you're having a good weekend. It's President's Day next day. Pray for this country that we don't get into a big conflict with Russia or anybody else. Okay. And I'll stop right here. I don't want to get political. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.